My name is Natalie Hart, and the night of my 34th birthday became the turning point I never expected. For weeks, I had been telling myself that this dinner would be different. I booked the private dining room of one of Chicago's most refined restaurants, a place where soft music filled the air and the walls seemed to glow with candlelight. I wanted the evening to feel like recognition, a chance for my family to see me, not just the version of me who paid their bills or solved their emergencies, but the woman who had fought to build a life of her own. I had chosen my dress carefully, a cream silk piece that I had saved for over 3 months to afford. When I slipped it on earlier that afternoon, I felt elegant, almost untouchable, as if the years of hustling in conference rooms and late-night strategy calls had finally taken shape in something visible. My heart was light when I walked into the restaurant's private room, where crystal glasses sparkled under soft lighting and polished silverware gleamed against crisp, white linens. For a few moments, everything seemed perfect. My mother, Elaine, was already seated, flipping through the menu as though it were a magazine she had read 100 times. My sister, Vanessa, sat beside her, leaning toward her teenage daughter, Sophia, whispering and laughing in a way that made me feel like the guest rather than the host. Still, I smiled, ordered a bottle of champagne, and tried to believe that tonight might just be about celebration. But from the very beginning, I noticed the undercurrent. Sophia, only 17, rolled her eyes whenever I spoke. If I commented on the food, she smirked. If I tried to steer the conversation toward work or travel, she sank into her chair with exaggerated boredom. Vanessa didn't correct her. In fact, she seemed almost entertained by it. My mother, always composed, smiled politely at the server, yet never quite met my gaze. The evening moved forward, but my hope began to fray. I reminded myself of everything I had done over the years to keep this family afloat. I had paid off my sister's overdue credit card, $4, $600 erased in a single transaction, because the collection calls kept her awake at night. I had bought Sophia a gray Honda Civic for $22,400 in cash, so she could drive to school, though the title remained in my name. I had added my sister as an authorized user on my account during a hard winter, a card she now used for groceries, gas, and far more. I had covered rents, sometimes $1,200, sometimes $800, always with the quiet understanding that it was temporary. And every time, I told myself that love meant giving without keeping score. Yet sitting there, with their laughter curling around me like smoke, I began to wonder if giving had turned into enabling. Then came the moment that changed everything. The waiter wheeled out my birthday cake, a pink frosted confection topped with candles. Everyone clapped lightly, though I noticed the way Vanessa's eyes wandered, and my mother barely lifted her hands. As I leaned forward to make a wish, Sophia raised her glass of cranberry mocktail. Her eyes locked with mine, sharp and deliberate. With the smallest twist of her wrist, she tipped the glass, and the red liquid arced through the air before splashing across my cream silk dress. The stain bloomed instantly, spreading down the bodice like blood. Time seemed to stop. Sophia leaned back in her chair and laughed. "Now you look cheap," she said, her words slicing through the silence. My sister reached over and patted her daughter's hand as if she had done something clever. My mother murmured, "She's only a child," in a tone that carried no reprimand, only dismissal. I sat still, my fingers tightening around the napkin in my lap. I could hear my own breathing, sharp against the hush of the room. Something inside me, something that had been straining for years, finally snapped into clarity. Every payment, every ride, every rescue I had performed had not brought respect. It had only bought expectation. The server hovered nearby, uncertain, until I met his eyes. "I'll take the bill," I said calmly. My voice didn't tremble. He nodded and disappeared. When the check arrived, I signed it without hesitation, $612, including the tip. Then I folded my napkin neatly, placed it beside the red-soaked dress fabric, and stood. "Thank you for coming," I said softly. No one moved to follow me as I walked out into the Chicago night. Outside, the air carried the chill of late September, and the wind off Lake Michigan smelled faintly of rain. I breathed it in like medicine. For the first time in years, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was simply clear. I ordered a car and slid into the back seat, the city lights streaking past. My townhouse in Logan Square was waiting, a brick structure I had purchased 2 years earlier for $790,000 after a decade of climbing from entry-level marketing coordinator to senior director. That house was mine in every sense. The mortgage was in my name, the title belonged to me, and every choice within its walls was mine alone. As the car carried me closer, I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app and removed the extra card linked to my account. A short message to Vanessa followed. As of today, that card is closed. Please transfer any recurring charges immediately. Next, I sent an email to my insurance agent, requesting that Sophia be removed from my auto policy within 10 days. The Civic, after all, was still under my name. Finally, I typed a brief note to my mother. I'm safe. I'm going home. We'll talk soon, but not tonight. When I stepped inside my townhouse, the quiet was thick and comforting. I walked straight to the kitchen, slipped out of the stained dress, and rinsed it in the sink. Red swirls bled into the water, disappearing down the drain. I laid the dress flat on a towel and filled the kettle. As steam rose, I held the warm cup of tea between my shaking hands, letting the heat settle in my body. I thought about tomorrow, about the folders I kept with every receipt, every transfer, every bill I had ever paid on their behalf. I would gather them. I would lay out the truth. For years, I had believed that family meant sacrifice without end. But tonight had shown me something different. Family, without respect, becomes a chain. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I sat at my kitchen island, staring at the soft glow of the pendant light above. My heart still hurt, but my mind felt sharper than it ever had. Tomorrow, the boundaries would begin. Tomorrow, the ledger would open. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that maybe, just maybe, choosing myself would not mean losing them forever. The morning after my birthday dinner, the city felt strangely quiet. Sunlight stretched across the maple tree outside my kitchen window, its leaves trembling in the breeze, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like running to rescue anyone. Instead, I brewed a strong cup of coffee, opened the drawer where I kept my files, and pulled out a thick folder I had avoided for too long. Inside it, every transfer, every receipt, every cleared check sat waiting, a silent record of years I had spent cushioning everyone else's life while draining my own energy. I set the folder on the dining table and opened my laptop. Numbers never lie, I reminded myself, and so I began creating a ledger, one page at a time. At the top of the first page, in bold letters, I typed Family Support Ledger. The words looked both strange and satisfying, like finally putting a name to a hidden illness. For 3 hours, I combed through my records. Rent payments, 3 separate stretches at $1,200 per month when Vanessa claimed her hours had been cut. Grocery runs, 5 of them, ranging from $150 to $250 when her fridge was empty and Sophia was starving. Utility bills, at least 6 payments, between $90 and $180, because the lights were about to be shut off. I remembered the late-night text messages, the urgent calls, the tears over the phone. Each one had felt urgent, but lined up in neat columns, they looked more like a pattern. Then came the bigger pieces. The $4,600 I paid in one swoop to clear Vanessa's credit card, so she wouldn't face collectors. The roof repair on my mother's house, 2 installments, totaling $1,100 because she had insisted water was coming through her bedroom ceiling. And of course, the gray Honda Civic I had purchased outright for Sophia, $22,400 in cash. At the time, it had felt like giving her wings. Now looking at the total, $35,972 in direct support, I realized I had effectively become their second income. And still, respect had never followed. I wasn't finished. Alongside the financial records, I added evidence of words that had cut deeper than money ever could. Screenshots of group texts where I was mocked for being a workaholic or called a rich girl in jest. A printed copy of 2 public posts from Sophia's social account, where she had joked that I was nothing but a walking ATM and a try-hard in heels. Seeing those words in black and white hurt more than I expected. When I finally closed the binder, it felt heavier than it should have, as though the weight of years had settled between its covers. I knew then what I had to do: call a meeting. On Wednesday afternoon, I sent out a group text. I need both of you and Mom at my townhouse this Saturday at 1 p.m. I'll provide coffee and sandwiches. We need 2 hours. Please come. The responses were short. Vanessa, what is this about? My mother, of course. Sophia, no reply. By Saturday, I had prepared everything. I laid out the ledger, my laptop, and a small ceramic dish on the dining table. Inside the dish sat the keys to the Civic, gleaming under the pendant light. Beside them, a crisp copy of the car's title rested in a manila folder. I wanted no confusion. At exactly 1 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my family standing together, already tense. Vanessa's arms were folded across her chest, her chin lifted like armor. Sophia tapped furiously on her phone, thumbs flying. My mother stood between them, composed but visibly uneasy, her lips pressed into a thin line. We settled at the table. I poured coffee, set out the sandwiches, but no one touched a thing. They looked at me as though I had dragged them into an ambush. I took a breath. I'll go first, I said, sliding the ledger forward. I'm not here to yell. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to put facts on the table. I flipped the pages one by one, reading out loud as I went. 3 months of rent, $3,600. 5 grocery runs, $940. 6 utility payments, $810. A credit card payoff, $4,600. Roof repairs, $1,100. The Civic, $22,400. Total, $35,972. That's not counting rides, errands, or favors at work. The room fell silent. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. Sophia's phone slid slowly into her lap. My mother's eyes locked on the car keys in the dish. I helped because I love you, I continued. But I'm not a wallet. I'm a person. I need boundaries, or I will drown under the weight of this family's needs. I turned my laptop around, displaying the screenshots of group texts. The jokes about my clothes, the digs about my so-called perfect life, the posts Sophia had written. The color drained from her face when her own words appeared on the screen. Vanessa broke first. You're humiliating us, she snapped, her voice sharp with indignation. No, I said evenly. I'm showing the truth. No yelling, no insults, just facts. I explained each step I had already taken. The extra credit card had been canceled. Sophia was no longer on my auto insurance. The Civic would be returned today. The title is in my name. The registration is in my name. It will come back to this house. I will drive you to your job interview on Monday, Sophia, but that will be my last ride. Vanessa shot me a look. Who do you think you are? I'm the woman who pays her own $3,850 mortgage every month, I answered calmly. I'm the one who built a home for herself after 10 years of hard work. And I intend to keep doing so. I won't fund luxuries anymore. I'll support growth. If you want help with the class, if you need a bus pass, I'll consider it. But cash gifts are over. I slid a thin envelope across the table. Vanessa hesitated before opening it. Inside was a letter from my lawyer, simple, clear, binding. It stated that I did not co-sign any loans for family members and that all prior financial help was considered a gift with no ongoing obligation. The document had cost me $350, but in that moment, it felt like the best money I had ever spent. The conversation swelled with protests, then ebbed into silence. My mother began to cry, quietly. I never meant harm, she said between tears. I only wanted peace. Peace needs truth, I said gently. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand, placing a clean handkerchief in her palm. Finally, I looked at Sophia. The car keys, I said softly. Her hands trembled as she picked them up and set them into the dish. I carried the dish to the kitchen counter and placed it down with care, as though I were lifting a stone from my chest. When they left, the house felt transformed. Not empty, but open, like I could finally breathe in my own space. I made a simple dinner of pasta and salad, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat by the window as the sun dropped behind the Chicago skyline. Boundaries, I realized, are not fences to keep love out. They are walls that hold a home together. And for the first time in years, I felt like my home was whole again. The first month after that meeting felt like living in a storm that refused to settle. Every day, my phone buzzed with messages from Vanessa. Paragraphs filled with complaints, pleas, and accusations. She reminded me of upcoming bills, hinted at late fees, and tried to tug at the strings of guilt she knew I carried. But I didn't fold this time. Instead of sending money, I responded with calm, short texts. There's a free clinic nearby. Here's a link to job postings. I hope you apply to one of them. My mother called often, her voice thick with disappointment. She said I had been cruel, that families should support one another no matter what. I listened, letting her words wash over me, and then answered the same way each time. I love you, Mom. That hasn't changed. I just can't keep being everyone's rescuer. She sighed, sometimes even cried, but I held firm. Instead of arguing, I invited her to my house. The first time she came after the meeting, she sat in my small sunroom, staring at the pots of herbs and the young lemon tree I had coaxed to life on the windowsill. She reached out and touched one of the leaves. You grew this? She asked softly. Yes, I said. She nodded, almost to herself, and the conversation turned to lighter things. We spoke about neighbors, about the weather, and about the flowers in her yard. It wasn't healing yet, but it wasn't breaking either. By the second month, the noise began to quiet. The Civic sat in my garage untouched. Its once cluttered backseat, filled with Sophia's schoolbooks and sneakers, was now empty. I listed it for sale, and within 2 weeks, a neighbor bought it for $18,900. Watching him drive it away was bittersweet, but when the transfer cleared, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I opened a new savings account and labeled it education and work. Into it went the Civic money. I wrote a sticky note and placed it in the front of my ledger. Bus passes. Short courses. Work shoes. If I were going to help, it would be investments in growth, not handouts. Sophia surprised me first. Out of nowhere, she sent me a photo of herself in a black polo shirt with a name tag pinned to the front. The caption read, "Got hired at Hyde Park Market. $15 an hour. 20 hours a week. Start Saturday." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I'm proud of you. Let me know if you need help getting there." Her answer came quickly, "I'll bike." 2 weeks later, she texted again. "Do you think this class is worth it?" Attached was a link to an online beginner's design course for $129. It wasn't much, but to me it was everything. She was asking, not demanding, not mocking, but asking. I paid for the course from the education account, logged it in my ledger, and sent her the receipt. She replied with a short message. "Thank you." No emojis. No sarcasm. Just 2 words that felt genuine. Vanessa, on the other hand, took longer to shift. She eventually moved out of her expensive River North apartment, downsizing to a smaller walk-up in Ravenswood. Her rent dropped to $1,350 a month, still high, but manageable compared to before. One night, she called unexpectedly. "I enrolled in a bookkeeping class at the community college," she admitted. "It's $310. There was a pause on the line as if she expected me to swoop in. But instead, I said, "I'll cover the textbook, not the class." Silence followed. Then, to my surprise, she laughed softly. "That's fair," she said. It was the first time in months we had shared laughter without it being at my expense. My mother started joining me on short walks by the lake. We picked a flat path where the breeze was steady but gentle, and sometimes we sat on a bench just to watch the water. During one of these walks, she finally spoke words I had longed to hear. "I did favor your sister," she said quietly, her eyes on the water. "I always believed you would be fine, that you didn't need me the way she did." The confession stung, even though I had always suspected it. "I still want a mother," I said simply. She turned to me then, her face tired but open, and took my hand. Her fingers felt smaller than I remembered. For a moment, the years of distance between us seemed to soften. As autumn came, my life fell into a steady rhythm. I woke early for work, poured my energy into campaigns and presentations, and in the evenings, I kept things simple: a run by the river, a quiet dinner of pasta and salad, a book, or a glass of wine at my kitchen island. Sundays became my anchor. I called my mother in the morning, checked in with Sophia about her shifts or her classwork, and sometimes laughed with Vanessa about an assignment she was struggling with. I didn't realize it at first, but slowly, the tone of my phone notifications had changed. Where there had once been demands and guilt, there were now updates, questions, and even gratitude. The air in my townhouse felt lighter. One Saturday in October, I was sweeping the back steps, clearing away the maple leaves that had piled high. The air smelled of wood smoke from a neighbor's fireplace. As I pushed the broom across the concrete, I thought of my father. He used to rake leaves in our yard when I was a child, whistling as the wind undid his work. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I leaned on the broom and looked at the little home I had built for myself. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a vessel that carried me forward, strong and steady. Inside, the ledger sat on the counter, not as a list of debts, but as a symbol of clarity. Life was far from perfect, but for the first time, I saw something I hadn't dared to hope for: progress. Sophia was working. Vanessa was studying. My mother was listening. And me, I was finally breathing. A year later, the calendar circled back to my birthday. My 35th. The thought of it had once filled me with dread, another reminder of strained dinners, forced smiles, and the endless role of being everyone's safety net. But this year felt different. It wasn't about a reservation at a fine restaurant or a dress worth months of savings. It was about something quieter, something real. On the morning of my birthday, I woke to sunlight streaming through the lace curtains in my Logan Square townhouse. The maple tree out front had turned golden, its leaves drifting lazily onto the sidewalk. I stretched in bed, listening to the faint hum of the city outside, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I spent the day preparing a simple meal. No caterers, no polished servers, no champagne bills. Just me, my kitchen, and the hum of music playing from the old speaker on my counter. I roasted a chicken with lemon and herbs, the skin turning crisp and golden in the oven. I boiled potatoes with rosemary and olive oil, their scent filling the whole house. For dessert, I baked a lemon cake that rose like a promise, its surface cracked just enough to look homemade. I set the table with 4 plates. The oak dining table was secondhand, one I had bought for $220 from a family moving out of the city. I had sanded it myself, smoothing out scratches until the wood glowed. When I placed the plates and glasses, I felt proud, not of money spent, but of effort, of care, of a home that reflected me. The doorbell rang first with my mother. She carried a small bouquet of white tulips wrapped in paper. She looked at me carefully when I opened the door, then smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years: soft, warm, present. "You look beautiful," she said. She didn't glance past me or look for flaws. She looked at me as if she finally saw me. A few minutes later, Vanessa arrived. She was holding her worn notebook in one hand and a small wrapped box in the other. I noticed something different about her immediately. She wasn't hiding behind bravado. She seemed lighter. "I got an A on my last quiz," she said proudly, flipping open the notebook to show me neat rows of numbers and highlighted margins. She handed me the box. Inside was a tiny silver key charm on a chain. "For your keys," she said softly. "For the keys you keep to your own life." My throat tightened, but I laughed through it, hugging her. Sophia came last. She wore a simple black dress, not flashy, not mocking. Her grocery store name tag was tucked into her bag, proof of her job that she had managed to keep for months now. She stood very straight at my doorway, her eyes steady. "I want to say this out loud," she said. "I'm sorry for what I did last year. It was cruel. Thank you for paying for the class. I'm saving now." The words caught me off guard, but I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward and hugged her. It wasn't the awkward embrace of obligation. It was real. For the first time, I felt we both could breathe in the same space. We sat down together at the oak table, the food spread between us. There was no performance, no clinking glasses in a crowded restaurant, no red drinks waiting to stain silk. Just us, plates of chicken and potatoes, soft music in the background, and the golden leaves of the maple brushing against the window. When dinner reached its natural pause, we each raised our glasses, my mother with wine, Vanessa with sparkling water, Sophia with plain water, and we shared toasts. My mother went first. She raised her glass with a shaky hand and said, "To my daughter, who holds herself with grace and holds her home with care." I see that now. Vanessa followed, her voice steady, but light with humor.
"To new math," she said.
My own columns and my own sums. We laughed together, the kind of laugh that doesn't sting but heals. Sophia looked around nervously, then lifted her glass. "To work and school," she said, "and not being a brat." That made us laugh harder, the sound bouncing off the walls, warm and forgiving. After dinner, we cleared the plates together. It was something small, but it mattered. There was no expectation that I would serve and clean while they sat. We stood shoulder to shoulder at the sink, drying dishes, laughing about nothing, moving like a family that finally understood balance. When the lemon cake came out, its sweet scent filling the room, we cut generous slices and sat again. No one complained about portion sizes, no one rolled their eyes. We ate, talked, and let the night unfold at its own pace. Respect lingered at the table like a guest we were all still getting to know. Not perfect, but real. When it grew late, my mother hugged me at the door. Vanessa pressed my hand before leaving, her notebook tucked under her arm. Sophia lingered for a moment, then whispered, "Happy birthday. Thank you for not giving up on me." I hugged her again and told her the truth. I never wanted to give up. I just wanted you to see me. After they left, I stood in the doorway, pulling my sweater tight against the cool night air. The street was lined with small squares of light from nearby windows, each one like a tiny life unfolding. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw the notification. My marketing bonus had landed, $14,000 before tax. I smiled and closed the screen. The money felt good, but what mattered most was knowing it was mine, to serve my plans, not anyone else's pressure. I walked back to the kitchen and wiped down the table. The silver key charm Vanessa had given me sat in a small dish, glinting under the pendant light. I picked it up, turned it in my fingers, and felt a quiet surge of pride. I looked at my reflection in the glass of the back door and saw a woman who had chosen herself, without turning her back on love. Limits had not destroyed us. They had taught us. They had forced us to see one another clearly, to stop pretending, to start building. I washed the last plate, turned off the light, and listened as the house settled with familiar creaks. For once, the sound didn't feel lonely. It felt like home. As I slipped into bed, I whispered into the dark, "Happy birthday." And this time, the words didn't feel hollow. They felt like truth, landing softly, belonging wholly to me.